Welcome to our podcast, Being a Digital Leader, the good, bad and ugly of digital transformation. I'm sure everyone's heard a lot about digital transformation, and unless you've done it, it can be quite scary and seem difficult to conquer. That's why we've set up this podcast, so that we talk to people who have been there, done that. Not only do we hear about how they did it and what they did, but how they felt doing it. Let's begin. My name is Simon Holden. I'm the Hub Executive for Scotland and Yorkshire, and I will be your host for today. And today I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Liam Dyson, Digital Product and Design Director at Asda, to talk about the genuine good, bad and ugly of digital leadership. So let's jump in. Liam is responsible for the services and features that power the e-commerce experience across grocery and George at Asda. He's led digital teams for the last decade in PlusNet, EE and BT before joining Asda earlier this year to help with their ambitious transformation programme. A Barnsley lad, he lives in the town with his wife and two kids, and when not on the M1 or ferrying his dance-mad daughter around, he enjoys, if that's the right word, following Barnsley Football Club. So, if we look at the story of your career, there's this clear through line from technical author at Orange to design and delivery manager at EE, and then head of digital at PlusNet, then digital product director at BT. What are the key moments for us there? What are the biggest challenges you faced, the big successes? And what are the sliding moments, doors moments you think, if I hadn't made that choice, then X would never have happened?
Yeah, it's a good question, and thank you for inviting me, first up. So I always, when people ask me like the sliding door moment, I always remember I started working in what became Telco and sort of was the original job into that sort of career in the call centre. 17 years old, wanting a bit of beer money to go out on a Wednesday night in Barnsley, second year of college from A-levels. I failed the interview for the call centre twice until I got in the third time. I remember it vividly. 20 hours a week contract, want to do broadband. And I, for one reason or another, didn't do particularly well at college, didn't work particularly hard, let's put it that way, in certain academic areas anyway, and ended up staying full-time in the call centre. And I remember vividly, I was working on a Thursday, my shift was Sunday to Thursday, 2 while 10. Absolute graveyard, like awful.
10 at night?
2 in the afternoon till 10 at night, Sunday to Thursday. And at Thursday afternoon, I remember my team leader at the time said, there's a meeting tomorrow in Leeds with the client. The client was like this all-seeing eye that everybody used to sort of use to motivate in a certain way. It's like, there's a meeting tomorrow with the client, they're building this new system, we need a volunteer. And I remember vividly and going, yeah, I'll do it. And I'm like, after I'd said it, I'm like, it's my day off tomorrow, what am I doing? And anyway, it turned into it was a conversation about this new CRM that we're building. Didn't even know what a CRM was. Didn't have any clue whatsoever about how you build or change anything. And I met some people, they liked me. 6 months later, I got offered a job directly working for Orange rather than this outsource partner. And ever since then, it was always a moment where I've gone, you just need to say yes to things. You don't know who you're going to meet. And ultimately, through my career, it's been people that I've met that has been what's opened doors for me. A colleague at EE left EE to go to PlusNet. She messaged me 6 months later and said, I think you'd really like it here. So I went along. The fella that interviewed me for a job at PlusNet moved to BT. He was the one that gave me my first head of digital job. I was really young. I was like 27-year-old. It was the first time that I'd ever had a head of digital. He had a lot of faith in me, so he gave me that gig. He then went to BT. I then went to BT, and like it just becomes about what was really interesting is that I learned pretty early on that it's about the network and the people and the relationships that you build. So I always look back at that. If I had have not said, yeah, I'll come in on my day off and travelling to Leeds, which for me, Leeds was a very far away place back then. lived on an 18-year-old, lived on a council estate. I was still like with my mum. So it was like this exotic day out, you know what I mean? It's not something that you did. So if I didn't have said yes to that and put myself a little bit out of my comfort zone or just like blindly jumped into it, I've no idea what I'd be doing today. But what that did do is it obviously got me into Telco. So want to do broadband became Orange. Orange became EE. I left EE to go to PlusNet, which was part of the BT group. BT bought EE. So then suddenly all these people that I'd been working with for 5-6 years was still part of my life again. And when I look back on sort of my career path, I've never really sort of plotted anything out. But what I do know is that I'm fascinated by change. And when you look at sort of the job titles that you mentioned there, everything for me has been about helping people, but also being part of something to be able to say that you made a change, like good or bad. Like, I started work today on something, and I always sort of use like a bricklaying analogy. I started today, there wasn't a wall there. I've now finished and there's a wall.
Yeah.
And it's that process of building something that customers like and that helps the business, but then also the relationships and the network that you build, and ultimately the relationships that you create with people that you do that with is what's been the thing that's really motivated me through my career. And I think that's why I've ended up being, I think my personality type seeks it out somewhat, but ultimately being attracted to sort of big leadership roles, because I like to think that I can have a positive impact on people's lives, both in terms of the products and services that we build, but ultimately the work that we do with, I've got a team of 70, and I like to think that hopefully it won't be the case for everybody, no doubt, but in 5 years, 10 years time, when the team's changed, they'll look back and go, oh yeah, Liam was good for me. Either I really liked him, or he told me what I needed to hear, or he helped me be better. Yeah. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but ultimately I'm fascinated by change, and I enjoy that process of change with colleagues that become friends, and ultimately like the network that you build with that.
Yeah. Have you actually got bricklaying skills?
Absolutely not. No, listen, I'd be eating beans on toast for 6 months to let somebody else do it. Okay, the least practical man you would ever meet.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that. No, I mean, loads of fascinating stuff in there. I think two things for me that I resonate significantly are the kind of always say yes to whatever opportunities are there, and the network, the power of relationships.
Huge.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you don't realise when you're starting out in your career, you think everything. You look up, you think everybody's got all the answers. You look up at your gaffer or your director and think, God, they must know everything. They must have technical skills. They must have whatever. But ultimately, it's all about people.
Yeah.
And the more I've sort of gone on in my career, the more I've realised that it's not about knowing everything. It's about having the right culture, environment, and relationships to be able to get stuff done.
Yeah. So in regards to that, so 15 years in kind of telco.
Yeah.
And then switched to Asda.
Yeah.
How that must have been was that challenging? Was there lots of surprises there? How did you find that?
It's very different. So when I left BT, one of the things I wanted to do when I said like, right, who do I want to work for next? I wanted somewhere that talked about that large team. I wanted to be part of a large team. I wanted to lead a large team. I wanted to be in a business in an area that could and will deliver change and that lots of people will use. And I mean, I wanted to be close to home. That really helped, I must admit. But ultimately, I wanted to have like a brand recognition. I wanted to know that the things that I'm building and the team that I'm working with are doing things that lots of people will use. I didn't quite appreciate the size and scale of Asda. You go from BT, which is omnipresent. Like everywhere you look, there's something to do with BT. Like the green box at the end of the road, the cables and it was so big that I didn't quite then realise the scale of what Asda was as well. You kind of think it's just a little bit smaller, but ultimately you've got 160 to 200,000 people working for it there or thereabouts. You've got 600 shops, if not more, and the rate of change and the impact that external factors has on the retail business is just huge. In my first week, I sat on a call and we were talking about the availability of, I can't remember what it was. It was like, was it fish cakes or something along those, like biscuits? There was something that that happened at some point. There was a factory, something had gone wrong, which meant that had this big knock-on impact in terms of availability of a product. And I'm sat there thinking, wow, you just never really considered that. So retail is very different to telco. Telco is fundamentally a technology business. You're creating technology products that people consume to then do something with. Whereas obviously retail is all about the operational excellence and efficiency of creating a product, transporting it to the right place and getting it into a customer's hands. So very different, culturally very different. The impacts of external factors, very, very different. But it's been a fascinating, I think I started on the first week of January, so it's been a fascinating 8-9 months. And learning new acronyms daily, and still piecing together some of the stories. So yeah, it's very, very different, but ultimately really, really enjoyable finding something new and getting some new perspectives.
Yeah. And I always loved the in retail, the kind of like for like sales every morning on Monday in terms of seeing what they how things are performed.
Oh yeah, the competition is huge, and I was mentioning it earlier on to you, Sam, but it was like the new story I saw this week in terms of Aldi have obviously been such a success story in the market over the last few years, but they're still talking about profit margins of a penny in the pound. So the level of the scale and then the efficiency of the model to be able to deliver those sort of margins is just something that means that there has to be that constant focus on commercial performance, the investment, the return of investment that you've got. One thing goes wrong and the week's broken, and we're just walking into what is now I know is the golden quarter. And I didn't quite, again, realise the level, people talking about Christmas in March, and I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very different. And again, just a different culture, expectations and needs for that business to run. It's fascinating.
Yeah. You've answered some of it, but so your title is Senior Product and Design Director. So what does that actually mean? What does that mean you do? It's not a trick question.
By what I do, I'm just thinking that some of my team will probably like listen to this and go, not much, pal. But so my responsibility is to make sure that we have got the right products and services to power our e-commerce channel. So we're set up in a way where obviously you've got a retail bricks and mortar business, traditional model, but then ultimately obviously we've got an e-commerce offer. Customers place an order online, we go and pick it and drop it to your door. It's my team's responsibility to make sure that we have got the right features and services to both power that experience for customers. So if I look at our search tool, for example, huge for that shopping journey. So I've got a couple of product managers responsible for our search performance and our search tool. And so I run all the my team are responsible for the performance of all the services that our colleagues will use to power the journey. So our merchandising teams, our CMS tool sits within my team. And also some of our other colleague experiences, like our contact centre systems that power the processes that come from the e-commerce side. So that's the product side, and then I've got sort of our UX and design disciplines of research, content design, and UX/product design working into me. They're responsible for one, understanding customer need and going out and identifying, all right, what are customers telling us through research that they want, validating experiences and ideas, and ultimately making sure that what we've got is something that can be used by all customers in an accessible way, and ultimately making sure we've got the right tools in the shed to let the business achieve what they want to achieve. So we work really closely with both our operational partners, who are then obviously responsible for the machine running day to day in the in the warehouses and in the stores and the driver processes and such, as well as our technology teams that are the ones they're building it. So we almost sit as a bit of an interface to make sure that we're clear on what the problem statements are, that we understand the constraints we might have from a tech perspective, and we throw that all into the mix and try and come out with something that works.
Busy man.
Try to be, anyway.
Fascinating, yeah. I've heard a bit about the roadshows you run. So what does that come... Can you sort of explain a bit about what that is and how that came about and what you're trying to do there?
Yeah, so the roadshows is a concept that predates me at Asda. So they are, in essence, an opportunity to lift the lid on what's going on in e-commerce. So they are a quarterly event that's open ticket to anybody across the business to say, come along, meet some vendors, see some of the work that's been built and delivered in the last quarter, get an idea of what's coming in the next. And it's, in essence, a communication and engagement activity to try and just lift the lid a little bit on the work that's going on across e-commerce and sort of the tech and the services that's being built. There's a big context at the moment in Asda around sort of the sale of the business from Walmart into over the last couple of years, and we're in the process of what's being billed as the biggest retail transformation in Europe at the moment, as we sort of come out of our relationship with Walmart, putting our own architecture, services and platforms in there. So it's an opportunity, as we're doing lots of work behind the scenes, to make sure that stakeholders, colleagues, etc. see it, understand it, and can go again piece together the context of, oh well, that means X for me. So it's always a lovely day. It's always an opportunity, and I love sort of standing back and seeing my team sort of share the work that they're doing and be able to be asked questions, and ultimately add a bit of transparency to what we do. I'm a huge fan of sort of building in public, and I think it drives the right behaviours, and it's not a product team can't be a team that sits in the corner and then just goes bang, we've done this thing. They have to be in all pies. They have to be everywhere to understand commercial challenge and business problem. They have to be able to piece together the context and be able to then marry that together with customer need and everything else that's going on in the market. So those roadshows are a real opportunity to help do that. And once we're through this program, it's something we might change how we execute it, but the principle of sharing openly and widely what we're doing and why is something that we'll definitely continue in one way or another.
Oh, brilliant. In the last one, was it a validation of, cool, we're doing the right things? Or did you get, and was there any little nugget that came out from feedback and went, oh, hang on, that's actually a really good point. We should stop doing that, or
I wouldn't say necessarily that, because I think what I expect from those nuggets that you reference should come out daily, weekly through conversation anyway. This is a rolled up jazz hands sort of session to be able to go, here's what we've done over that time period, rather than let's validate a concept or an idea or whatever. So that doesn't come to mind. What I loved seeing was we had an accessibility station. So my design team put to one side, set something up, and was sort of just trying to make it really clear to colleagues why accessibility is important. And the queue went to that stall and sort of seeing people sort of put themselves in users' shoes when we talk about designing by committee of, oh, can we have that button smaller, and I want this and want that, and actually can turn around and go, well, all right, let's put this glove on that almost sort of puts you in the shoes of a user that might be suffering with arthritis or whatever else. You go, right, you try and press that button. Well, yeah, it kind of brings it home a little bit. So seeing that, and ultimately, yeah, like I said, standing back and seeing my team get a round of applause and sort of stand up in front of 200 people in our auditorium and go, here's the work that I'm doing and why, were just really quite nice.
Oh, very powerful. Just to bring it back to the good and the bad and the ugly piece, so about your role. So what do you love about what you do? What don't you enjoy quite as much? And what's the top of your list and things you would like to change or improve that you can share with us?
Okay, let me temper that then. What do I love? I love helping people get better at their jobs. So when I stand back, I don't see myself as a technical expert. I talk to some product directors who are so over the detail of how to build products and the ways and the tech that's required to do it, and they could and probably do sit in more tech organisations. Whereas I see myself more as a sort of people first sort of change leader versus a technical expert. I can certainly have the conversations, but it's not something that I get particularly excited about. The thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is knowing that we're going to try and fix a problem today, or I'm going to try and help somebody learn something new or be better. So I love knowing that I have hopefully positive impacts on people's lives, both in terms of colleagues and also in terms of like customers. What I don't like is a bit strong, but I'm not a particularly detail man.
Okay.
So back to the point we just talked about there. I don't particularly enjoy standing back and let's have a look at some Jira tickets, let's see where we're at in terms of stories, what's the progress in the burn down and whatever else. That's not something that really excites me. I know I need to do it and I do it, but it's ultimately not the thing that I go, right, nice one, let's get into this baby, shall we, logging into Jira in the morning. And what would I change?
Yeah. Or improve. I
think the thing that I am always... What's interesting at Asda is that I'm really keen to introduce some more sort of consistency and repeatability. We've got great product teams that sit in multiple areas of the business. You think of the products that you use in store, you think of the products that we use from a loyalty perspective. We've got Asda credit cards and various other things. They're all doing fantastic work, but in different ways. So one of the things that I'm really keen to introduce is a common community of practice, bringing together all of our sort of product and designers from across the business who work what we'd call different towers in sort of different verticals and areas, into one space, and to try and learn from each other, and to make sure that we can almost define and set a standard as to this is what we mean by product in Asda. These are the tools that we use. Here's the processes that we follow. Here's how we take something through from concept into various iterations and out to customers, rather than everybody doing it in their own sort of way. So I'm really keen to introduce that consistency, and hopefully that will then drive efficiency and quality out of it as well.
I presume there's an appetite for that. It's just time and
huge. Yeah, and again, the retail market is so competitive that it's always really important that whilst obviously we're thinking day to day and week to week in terms of performance and reacting to the market and like challenges that go on, there is appetite absolutely in terms of changing how do we work. Like as I say, the program itself that we're working on at the moment is in essence creating a brand new platform to power Asda as a whole, and there's lots of demand and lots of pressure to do that and to make sure that we get that out the door. But I think we all know that it's all well and good having the best tools and working with the best vendors if you've not got the right culture and ways of working. And that's definitely something that when I go and talk across the aisle, as it were, into different areas, there's a real appetite to go, oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And maybe this is a link into this, but in your LinkedIn profile, kind of when I was looking at it this morning, it said, I build great teams and empower my people to deliver more than they thought possible. So that's kind of coming back to the culture of the teams and so on. So how do you do that, and why is that central to what you do?
Well, you tested, because I wrote that when I was looking for a job. So you tested me.
As in back last year, you're not looking for a job now?
No.
Good.
I'll change that. Thank you for the reminder. I give people lots of space. As I say, I'm not a detail person, so I'm not somebody that's going to be on somebody's shoulder all the time going, have you done this, have you done this, have you done this? I don't see myself as a task manager. I remember I once saw you might have seen it, but I always remember like looking around, looking at some of the directors when I was particularly at PlusNet, that like the level of detail that people are getting into, and like I always just felt like it was, like, am I doing something wrong? Like, is that because I can't see myself doing that? And I remember seeing an infographic or a video by he's in the US Navy, David Marquette, I think he's called. It's a book called Turn the Ship Around.
Yes.
And he talks about intent-based leadership, this idea of providing context, creating a culture and a trust, and enabling people to make the decisions because they're closer to the information. And I remember watching that, and it's like a little handwritten video. It's about 10 minutes. You'll find it on Google, on YouTube. But I remember watching that, and I'm like, that makes sense. You know, just something just clicked, and it's like, that's the way I'd like to be. And no, listen, I'm certainly not comparing myself to him, but ultimately, like that idea of giving people a direction, making them feel safe, giving them the tools and the skills and the processes to do their job, but ultimately letting them go off and do it and learn and make mistakes and to realise themselves how to do it better the next time and whatever else within the realms of structure and governance and whatever else. But that is how I like to lead my teams, and I like to give them plenty of space, because I think that by giving space it allows people to grow into it. If I'm stepping on toes and sort of challenging every decision and pointing towards directions, ultimately they're much smarter than me. I've got 70 people, 70 brains trying to fix a problem is much better than me going, I want you to do this, you to do this, you to do this. And that's the way that I try to do it. And it takes some adjustment sometimes. Like I know when people have joined my team in the past, it's often taken a little while for us to get to know each other and almost like trust in my intentions a little bit, and that I'm not giving somebody enough rope almost and like trying to trip them up. And it is about them learning and making mistakes and trusting that, all right, well, let's go and fix it now. If we've made it, what have we learned? We've learned X, right? So now we're going to go and change it, rather than this idea of I'm just going to wait to be told what to do by Liam because he's the one that ultimately is going to shout at me and get annoyed if I don't do it well. So it can take some adjustment, and it can often be a bit rocky early doors, but sometimes when it clicks, it's then that you go, right, people are doing more than they did before. They've learnt more in a quicker space of time, and ultimately I can see their growth from afar rather than me writing the detail of it.
Yeah, you spoke about trust, which is kind of a key part of that. Did that take, when you started at the start of January, did that take a while to build, or was the team already operating in that way, or how did that unfold?
I think as ever, when you come and join a new team, it always takes time to trust in somebody's intentions. I made a lot of mistakes when I first joined. I'm quite a giddy kipper sometimes. I'm like, right, let's get in and change it. Let's rip it up. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I've learnt an awful lot in terms of these last 8-9 months of, all right, when's the right time? What's the right method? For somebody that they didn't know from Adam to come in and start challenging quite vocally, how do we do things, whatever else, probably rubbed people up the wrong way. And it was certainly never my intention. So I've learnt an awful lot of, hopefully I'm at Asda for a long time, but as and when I become or join a new team, I've learnt an awful lot personally about how would I go about that again. So yes, I think we are going through a culture change. I think the team and the people that were before me did fantastic things, but obviously, like I mentioned before, my approach is a little bit different. So it does take that time to adjust. And I hope that the team do trust me now. And I think the way that I've gone about that is through authenticity. So I'm very happy to admit when I got something wrong. I'm not one of those people that is just gonna double down on something because my ego says I've got to. I might not come across it, but I can be quite reflective, and I do take things home and I'm like chatting through with my wife and like, oh, I should have done this and what's this and how do I make it better. But ultimately I just think that I try to be, and I expect this from all my people, but I just try to be a good person. I try to be a good colleague. I try to help when it's needed. I try to listen when I should. I try to step in and fix problems when they're presented to me. And hopefully over that time, through those sort of little micro actions and behaviours and whatever else, people start to see that, oh, he's not just saying it. He's not just saying, oh, it's all right going, oh, you trusted, go on and fix it. And then suddenly somebody gets a problem and I start shouting away. So I think, I do hope the team trust me now. They probably didn't at the start of the year, and probably quite rightly. There's still always more to do, but I think we're getting there.
Brilliant. Maybe two slightly easier questions, or you can judge. So I don't want to go away without asking about Graft. Tell me what that is and your role in that and why you co-founded it. Please.
Yeah, of course. We talked about Barnes, the football club, at the start. Like that's one of the constant things in my life until the kids arrived. Started going when I was 7 or 8 years old with my dad. My dad's an ex-coal miner. Obviously, like lots of people in Barnes in the area in the late 80s and 90s, it was a really tough time. It's only probably recently, it's still bottom quartile socio-economically. It's an area that has been through some real turmoil over the last sort of 30-40 years, from a town that was practically full employment because of nationalised industries and whatever else, to a town that was really struggling to not only recover from that economically, but try and identify its, who are we again? So I started going to the football with my dad in 95, 96, 7 or 8 years old. Luckily enough, it was the year that Barnsley got promoted to the Premier League.
Very good.
Did all right. And I remember actually, I'm big into sports documentaries. I try to learn a lot from different leaders and whatever else, and sort of try and see stories of how they've reacted to stuff. And I remember watching a documentary about Leeds United winning the Premier League in '92. Howard Wilkinson. It was called "Do You Want to Win?" And I remember watching it, I'm thinking, that's lovely, but Leeds winning First Division is not a story. They've won it plenty of times 20 years before and whatever else. They're a huge club and whatever else, saying that through gritted teeth, knowing where I am as well. But I remember thinking to myself, Barnes is a story. A club that got promoted to the Premier League in the first time in its history, and the backdrop of that sort of socio-economic challenge, the 90s. I think Barnes got promoted on the 26th of April 1997, and a week later Labour Party got in after 18 years. It's obviously a huge Labour heartland and everything else. So there was just this moment of change, the first, like towards the end of the 90s, the last sort of period pre-internet and social media, and it all felt a bit simpler. Sky had just come in and whatever else. So I remember talking to a friend of mine who was a cameraman. He's a cameraman at Sky Sports.
Okay.
Yeah, lucky man. He was at Solheim Cup last week and is at the Ryder Cup this week. So he does all
Heart
right.
bleeds, yeah.
Awful. It tells me it's difficult, but it's not. And I remember saying to him, I said, shall we make a documentary? So we did. So we created Graft as sort of the vehicle and like the holding company to crowdfund for. I think we first started off trying to raise $5,000 just to sort of give us some working capital to go out and hire some gear and go and talk to some people and do some interviews. And we did that. And then ultimately that became a documentary called Daydream Believers. We released that in September 2018, just before my daughter was born. We released that in September 2018, sort of 20 years after Barnsley's Premier League season. We held a premiere in the town. We had all the old players come along. We had people flying from all over the world to be there. The TV cameras from Sky Sports and whatever else covered it, and it was lovely. And ultimately that went on to raise about $70,000, I think, for local charities. So we donated all that back into, it was the Barnsley Hospital were creating a new neonatal ward. And my friend, who was the co-founder of Graft and I did the film with, his little boy was born at something like 25 weeks. So like we were literally editing the film and writing the scripts and sort of doing the final touches to it whilst we were often like sat next to Bodie in the hospital with the beeps everywhere and whatever else. So we decided then to like donate the money into Barnsley Hospital charity. And yeah, that was Graft. We did toy a little bit with like, can this become something? Do we try something else? We started having conversations with different clubs about, can we do the same thing for you? And it just sort of never really like went bigger than that Daydream Believers film, but it went off. It was shown in film festivals in Germany, Brazil, America. We sold thousands of DVDs. Not enough because I've still got a load at home. So if anybody needs out, let me know. But yeah, it was a it was a massive passion project. It took an awful lot of time and energy, but I think it did a lot of good. It sort of put something to print almost for other people to see it later down the line.
What a story! So if I would like now to watch that, do I have to get the DVD off you, or do I?
Yeah, I think I've probably got some in my bag actually.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but I'll daydream-believers.co.uk. I don't even know if the URL's still up and running. To be fair, it's been like 5 years now, but I'll double check it.
And if Barnsley, if their performances improve, is there an opportunity for another documentary at some point, or is that?
I think the kids and my wife would probably put paid to that this time. To be fair, it was all done pre-kids, but I think ultimately, I don't think the story is the same. I think the first time's always the most special, and again, I don't think the context of the place kind of lends to this. It'd be an unbelievable story if Barnsley got back to the Premier League. Don't get me wrong, and I'd be quite happy about it, but it wouldn't have the same resonance. Like, I remember my dad crying on the pitch after the bet Bradford, and I'm thinking, this is a man who was in his mid-30s. He'd been on strike in '84 in his 20s. He'd had to change his career. He became a nurse and a mental health nurse, and he'd gone from being a blacksmith in early 80s in a pit to being a mental health nurse in the mid-90s, because it was like you had to find something new, and his was a story like many others. So I don't think the context would be the same. It would be lovely all the same, definitely.
Well, fingers crossed. Final one that you can decide whether this is hard or easy. What would your title be?
You said red and tyke, didn't you? But like I said at the start, but since COVID and since kids, my time and energy has probably gone a little bit further away from Ortwell.
Documentary maker.
Yeah, I did one, so you could have that. I'm not sure I could really have one thing in my life that I've done, and that's my and.
Right, I think that's more than most people.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The thing that always comes to mind, and it sounds a bit cliche, is my kids. So like, I've got 2 kids. I've got Evelyn that's 4, Judah that's 2. They're an absolute pain. I'm not allowed to swear. They're
challenging.
They're joyous for me. Yeah, this morning especially. But I would say, and devoted dad.
Lovely.
Or dance dad.
Dance dad, yes.
Dance dad.
Yes.
She's all glitter and leotards at the minute, so we're in show season. So yeah, we're traveling, going around. So yeah, and dance dad.
Good choice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Well, that's everything for this edition of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly of Digital Transformation podcast. Thank you again to Liam. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please follow us or just subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode to enjoy.
Thank you very much.
And Digital is on a mission to close the digital skills gap. We do that through working with our clients to deliver digital transformation through better upskilling and reskilling.